Check it
Hello?
Hey, Bree, how you doing?
Hey, good, pretty good. How are you, Mario?
I'm doing all right. Hey, I was psyched to see you and Cameron climbing last week. How did your session go?
It was pretty good. Haven't been on ropes in a while. I feel like I just need to start training a little bit more again. What was that hangboard you mentioned to us?
It was a flashboard. And I think it's the best one because you can use it indoors, you can use it outdoors. It doesn't really matter where you use it. You can hang it on stuff. You don't have to mount it to your wall, so it's pretty dope.
Oh, that's great because I feel like I can't put holes anywhere in my house, but
yeah,
that's awesome. Where can I get it?
You can go to Tension's website, and then whenever you do, just drop in the promo code Tension SAS20. You'll get 20% off. You'll support the podcast, and but then they'll get it to you on the quickness.
Oh, sick. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. Are you guys climbing again this weekend?
Yeah, I think we'll hit up maybe the new rope gym down in the Design District.
Oh, the new movement is finally open. Nice.
Finally, after our long wait.
I know. That's a long wait, but I'm excited. Well, I'm looking forward to climbing with both of you guys, and I'll see you guys this weekend.
Yeah, I'll catch you later. Bye.
Bye. Friends and enemies, lovers and haters, welcome to Sends and Suffers podcast. I am your host, Mario Stanley. If you haven't already, please follow, like, and subscribe to Sends and Suffers podcast. Every bit counts, and we would love to hear from you. So take a moment to leave a comment. These go a long way and help others know what they're getting into and how good this show is. If this is one of your favorite podcasts, consider becoming a Patreon. For as little as $5 a month, you are investing in Sends and Suffers podcast, and it's like buying your boy a taco, hanging out, and getting to know the good that is coming your way. Monthly recaps, early show releases, and all the other cool things that we do. Thank you so much for listening to Sends and Suffers podcasts. Today's episode is with the owner, founder, co-creator of Blockworks Gym in Edmond, Oklahoma. And let me tell you, this is the best hidden gym in the South. I'm telling you, Oklahoma is just coming for it. It might not be your mega gym. It might not be your monolithic monster that you like, but what it lacks in size, it has in charisma, community, beauty, and just the most warmest, inviting place. It's like being invited to your friend's family dinner and you didn't even know you had these friends. That's the only way I know how to describe walking into that gym. Evan started out as a route setter and just worked his way into the climbing career and eventually realized he wanted to open a gym. I am so excited to share this episode with you. I aspire to maybe do something like this myself in my life one day, but I cannot wait for you guys to hear this episode. I would love for you to make a trip to Edmond, Oklahoma. If you have not already seen Blockworks Climbing Gym, you gotta do it if you're in the South. It's worth the drive. All right, I digress. Let's get into the episode and enjoy my conversation with Evan. Evan, how are you?
Good. Yeah. Glad to be here.
Yeah, dude, I'm psyched to have you. Welcome to Sends and Suffers podcast. And thank you for inviting me in your beautiful gym. This place looks gorgeous.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what it's here for.
Yeah. So who are you? Where are you from? And what is your relationship to the outdoors? And why did you create this masterful work of art?
That is a very long story.
Well, that's what we're here for.
So the bullet points, like early on, my name is Evan Small, born and raised here in Edmond, Oklahoma. I'm a husband to Mariah Small. It's also one of my business partners, and I'm a dad to 2 amazing kiddos, Willow, who is 2.5 years old, and then Jude, who is 4 months. The outdoors has always been something that's like been a part of my life. I think just because I was too crazy to keep inside. So my parents always kicked me outside, and that's just what I did. So I also had really amazing parents that took me outside to the Wichita Mountains in Oklahoma a lot, to go camping. And yeah, I think that stuff was always like kind of just a part of our, I guess, like lifestyle or something that my parents always, they didn't encourage it, but like, I mean, it was what we did maybe once a year or twice a year. And then, later on in life, probably some stuff that we'll talk about. It just, I think just continued to develop. And after I quit college sports, I was like, okay, now I'm all in on the outdoors, and like, I think this is what I want. So,
but did you start climbing in the outdoors after you're quitting college sports? And what college sports did you quit?
Yeah. So I saw climbing for the first time. Like, I think it was like tangible to me in Estes Park, Colorado, at Lumpy Ridge.
Yeah.
So I went and saw a few friends, going backwards a little bit. I played college baseball for a semester in Kansas. And then after about 6 months, I had an elbow injury that I was just like, man, it was just pissing me off all the time. I didn't want to wake up at 5 a.m. and go to practice because it was bothering me. And then also I was dating a girl back in Edmond, which was like a 3-hour drive. So yeah, it just seemed like the cards were against me. And I think just at that stage, I was away from home for the very first time, and finally decided to like call it quits and come back here to school. And one of my friends, fortunately, he was like one of my best friends in high school. He was actually a year younger and was on like a break up in Lumpy Ridge, working at like a YMCA camp, I think, or something like that. And we had talked on the phone, and I think he could just tell I was, whatever you want to call it. At the time, I wouldn't have called it depressed, but now I'm like, oh yeah, that was like an athlete who was like removed from sport. And then like, what's the next thing? I just think I was like pretty lost. And so he invited me to go to Lumpy Ridge and just, I think really just hang out with him. I don't really know if he even told me they were going climbing, but as soon as they started, I was like, bro, I'm not doing that. Like, y'all continue on. This is awesome to watch, but I'm here to like hike and hang out. And anyways, I think something clicked that day to where I was just thinking to myself, you know, I was an athlete. This is the outdoors. This does something for like my brain and my mental health. And, but also like I see the physical side of it and the challenge of like not being good at something. And so I didn't climb that day, but I moved back. I traveled back to Oklahoma and contacted another friend immediately, and he took me to the Silos, which was like an old school climbing gym downtown. And I climbed there twice. And then ironically enough, the second time in there, I met my wife. So she was in the bouldering room by herself. And I somehow mustered up the confidence through like my chacos and tie-dye shirt to like go up to this girl. I mean, like,
like classic dirtbagger chic.
Yeah. And if you asked her, it was a massive fib, because I think I went in there and I said something like, oh yeah, like my friends and I, we go climbing outside like all the time together. And this is my second time in the gym, like let alone.
I mean, dude, I give you props for going in swinging.
I don't know. Something, maybe it was some substance I had before. I don't know what it was, but fortunately got the confidence to do that. And then we just started climbing together. And ever since then, man, it's like just what we did. And we were broke college students. So it was like our vacations would just be like going sleeping in the dirt in Arkansas and climbing. And
beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, fast forward a bunch, and I've worked in all sorts of different roles in the outdoor industry, and then eventually wanted to do this place. So
so when was the transition? I guess like when was the moment that you actually moved into the climbing industry as a whole? Like what was the baby step to that? And then like, how did you get into that? Because I think it's important to kind of set that tone to like how this beautiful behemoth was created, because I think this episode is very important to me, because I think there's a lot of people who like small town America is a big thing. Like most of America is rural. So like that's just the reality of it. Like we like to think that the big cities are it, but that's not the bulk of America.
Right.
And that's not it. And so this is very important to me, because I want to see this reproduced. Like I want to see more of this and making climbing accessible and making it accessible in small town America and communities that are either underprivileged or kind of everywhere. Because like, I think this
or just don't have access.
Like that's the keyest thing. Like just like, if you can just get people to the wall and like, we can, like, I don't know. I've said this to me, even when I'm running my guiding company, I'm like, listen, let me just get you to the wall. We'll figure out money and payment things later. Like it's not important. What I want you to do is just like, see if this vibes with you. And so I'm kind of going on a rant because
I totally agree.
Yeah. We both love climbing. So like, what did you do before? Yeah. What was like the pre-careers and like,
Yes. So like I said, I had amazing parents. When I quit baseball and I started climbing, I think my parents knew that like something was happening that was very right for me at that stage of life. And I was dating Mariah. So it was probably 2 years into my climbing career, whatever you want to call it. So I started in 2009. So this is probably 2011. We had been dating for a few years together. And I think at that point, I'd at least dropped out of college once. This is a chance. This might have been the time where I was like thinking about dropping out for a second time. And, at that, I don't know, just it felt like I didn't have direction. So my amazing parents, my mom, who's just like a worrier, and she's also like a nurturer and like just cares so much about everyone. Like when she doesn't have someone to care about, she goes out and like finds that person that she could care. It's awesome. Crazy. Such a good mom. And I was that person for a lot of my troubled high school and college years. But so she was talking to a friend, and the friend mentioned a NOLS course. So NOLS is National Outdoor Leadership School. And at the time, my mom was like, hey, if you hate being in the classroom, like, what if we helped you fund this like NOLS course? You can get college credit for it. And at the time, I'm like, I'd started looking through the online courses, and I was like, 3 weeks rock climbing in the backcountry of Wyoming. Yeah, I think I might be into this. Like, we should do it. So just crazy privileged and fortunate to have parents like that were like, hey, we want to help you figure it out. And dude, it was totally life-changing. I went on the NOLS course, first and second day. It's like, if no one knows anything about NOLS, you like put your cell phone in a locker and like leave your life behind to like go out in the wilderness for 3 weeks. Which sounds like kind of cool, but I think whenever you do it, it actually becomes like really intimidating. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so, I was dating Mariah for a couple of years, and I think day 1 and 2, it was like, okay. And then all of a sudden I was just like, dude, I don't like this. I want to go back. So it's just that funny dance of like, I don't want to be here, but I do really love this. And then after 4 and 5 days like that, it just gave me margin in my life where like I didn't have margin to think about the things that I actually wanted to do. If that makes sense. Like I just didn't have those times in my day to where I was like, okay, who do you want to be? What do you want to be doing? I was just constantly like thinking about my failures of like, oh, I'm going to drop out of college again. And what am I going to do for work? And so being in the backcountry on a climbing trip without a cell phone was like the perfect medicine for me to like, what I would say is like connect with my creator and like understand that I have some sort of calling, some sort of greater purpose. And so when I came back, I was just like total life change. Like there was a bunch of stuff in our house that I won't mention that like I got rid of that stuff. And I was just like, dude, I'm in on this thing, whatever this is, I don't know. And so 2 blocks down from where we are right now, there's an outdoor shop that I went in there and applied. I was just like, I don't know what I want to do for you guys, but I want to work in the outdoor industry. Like, how do I do it? And so I started working there. After a few years, I became the manager and like managed that for 5 years. Then a really dope gym called Threshold was rumored to be opening up in town. And I was just like, yes, like I'm in. I've been climbing in a grain silo for, however many years until now. And I knew the Tarkingtons decently well prior to that. So, I was kind of in on that conversation, and then, became the head route setter there at that gym and coached some of the youth team, did a lot of operation stuff. So I really got my feet wet and like what it looks like to like be in a climbing gym and work specifically in that industry, and just loved it. But at the same time, I was finishing up my degree, which was in exercise science, like kinesiology. And whenever I graduated, I think there were just some things with like, and I think that's in any industry. If you work for a place and like you're extremely passionate about it, you have a little bit more of a critical eye, I think.
You do. That's true.
So I think there's just some things that were like leading me to probably pursue my degree instead of like staying in the climbing industry.
Yeah.
And fortunately, my degree ended with an internship in cardiac rehab at the Oklahoma Heart Hospital. And so out of my internship, I got hired, which was fantastic. And I got to work like a nurse's shift. So I would work 3 13-hour shifts, which meant I had like 4 days off every single week. It was incredible. And honestly, if this place ever like dissolved, I might just go back to it. Cause I got to work with like, geriatric, like older patients.
That's
and,
cool.
It was so much fun, extremely rewarding. But, after a couple of years, my personality just gets like pretty restless. And even with like a good rhythm and benefits and time off and all that stuff, I found like on my off days, I was just dreaming about, I was looking at gyms up in Canada, like Block Shop, and watching videos like B Pump. And I was just like, why do we not have something like this? And then like knowing deep down, like what over that 10 years climbing had done for me, and just seeing a gap. I was just like, there's a gap here. There's cool towns where this thing could happen. And so on my off days, I just started writing a business plan, and that's like the long story of how we got to kind of where we are.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you think your time in the hospital kind of like, I don't know. I'm just thinking about you working with patients, and there's a lot of tenderness. There's a lot of, it's a wild ride of emotions. Like I've never worked in the medical field, but I work with kids on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And they're wild enough. So I can only imagine that. But I will say, like, if it was not working for children, I would not be the person that I am, and tempered, and as well as good of a communicator to communicate with people to get them into climbing or to express this sport. And so I think children taught me, I had patience, but children taught me how to listen and absorb with patience, because I think a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this, people have patience, but they're not paying attention. And so was there anything that you learned in your time in the hospital that you think that had kind of really prepared you for what you're doing now?
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, tenderness is like, that's like the biggest, and not everyone has it when they work in that industry, I think. But like for me, tenderness was, like something that was just crucial to being a good employee. Cause like these people just went through a massive life event.
How do you define tenderness? And like, I guess it makes sense there, but how do you define tenderness in the concept of here?
Yeah. It's like our vision is to be the leading bouldering venue for warm hospitality and captivating climbing experiences.
That's beautiful.
So warm hospitality probably just funnels out of that, of like, okay, someone who just went through this life event, they had a heart attack, they had an open heart surgery, and we're going to go through an exercise program with them. Like that needs some care, and like very gentle care from beginning to end. And then honestly, does it ever end? Probably not. And it's the same here, like those two doors, we talk about them a lot as like that's still like a barrier for us. So like when someone walks through the door, providing warm hospitality, and that for us means a lot of different things. And we coach staff on that regularly of like, what does warm hospitality look like? I think that the hospital most definitely prepared me to have an even greater soft spot for that, for sure. Coming into the climbing industry, and just knowing like, like we talked about, we know the sport, and it's not just climbing. Climbing is our thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's CrossFit for some people, for others, it's, jazzercise or bowling, like whatever it is, like, but really like that, like there's studies out there that talk about the mental health of doing these things that are physically active, that provide not only physical, but mental benefits.
Yeah.
And I think that, it's a huge part of who Blockworks is. Yeah.
So I think, a question I like to ask is like, when did you get hooked on climbing? I think you said that. So I guess what What about climbing is so special to you that made you bring forth this idea? Like, why is climbing special to you? Like, what does it do for you?
What does it do for me?
I guess the real question
now that I'm a gym owner, it literally is my life. It was before too, but
yeah. Why is it special?
It changes. I think it has been a lot of different things from the beginning. It was what my girlfriend and I did together. And then like the gym owner at the silo was the first one to hand me a T-wrench and be like, hey, you want to start turning holds? And like, I think the caveat was like, don't move them, but like, yeah, sure. You can turn them and like put new tape underneath them and like build new boulders and stuff. So like it was, and this isn't something I talked about, but probably maybe the biggest thing that made me open a gym was like, my dad is an architect that broke off from his firm probably when I was like 8 or 9 years old. Maybe I was 10. But he started a small business, like his own architecture firm.
Oh, wow.
And I think when I first opened this place, I think I took that for granted a lot, but like I was around small business my whole life. I just didn't really know it, or didn't think about it in that way. But now that I'm here, I'm like, oh, it's just normalized. It was something I saw. So
that's a blessing. Yeah. That's a blessing to understand that, like, because I don't think that's something, I know that's not something I had. I grew up with my parents basically having normal jobs. Like my dad had 2 or 3 jobs growing up. My mother had 1 job or 2 jobs growing up. And I come up from a family of like just hustling. Like, okay, like I don't want to say money was never right, and money was never tight, and money was never right, but cash flow was like understanding cash flow was a very, very crucial part of my life. Like understanding like when things are coming in, when we can do this, when you do that. And I think that is something that like, if you don't understand, that's it. And if you grow up in that world, understanding it, you just have this instincts. And that's kind of cool that's kind of cool that like walking into this and creating this, it felt natural for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Just something I saw every day. So, yeah. And then I guess, so it was like what I did with my girlfriend, and then the root setting side of it was probably like my dad being an architect. I was always really interested in like clean lines and design and all that, like the aesthetic side of things. I don't think my root setting early on reflected that. It's like definitely gotten better over time. And then sometimes
anybody's does.
Yeah. And then sometimes it's gone too far to where it's like, oh, it has to look good and it doesn't even matter if it climbs good. I've definitely swung all over the place on that.
I put some trash on the wall. I'll never forget, Chris. I was like, I put this boulder on the wall and Chris was telling me this thing looks like garbage. And I like, climb it. And Chris got on it and he was like, all right, that was pretty wild ride.
That means a lot coming from Chris too.
Yeah, I was super stoked when he said that. I was just like, yeah, the flow man, the flow master. That's what I like to call Chris the Crasco. The flow Crasto is what we'd always call him during when we were always forerunning together.
Yeah.
So how long has the gym been here now?
So we opened in February of 2020.
All right, beautiful. And then what services do you provide that for someone to come in right off the street? Like what can they expect for signing up and getting a membership with you?
Yeah, the main way to interact with our facility that we see people do most commonly is a membership. So like any other, CrossFit, Orange Theory, that type of stuff, it's unlimited. So you come in and the gym is yours for that monthly fee. And then the other way is like a lot of people like to dip their toes in and just see if climbing is for them. So obviously we do day passes and punch passes for the people that are like maybe out of town or they're a member at another gym and they like to climb here. And then youth programs is a huge thing for us. Because we're so small and because we're so focused on like young adult, like culture and community. And like honestly, that's who we root set for is like primarily that like a little bit, 7 to 10 years and older demographic. We like to funnel a lot of our youth interactions towards our programs and not as much towards like, hey, just drop in and like burn some energy.
No, that's beautiful. That's with intent. I think that's something that's lost a lot. I've been doing this series in Texas that I've been working on. I'm trying to interview every youth coach in the state of Texas. Currently there's like 38 of them and I've got like 15 people done. No, more than that, like 20 people done. I think there's a few more now, but it's every youth coach at my level, not at like Team Texas, World Cup level, everybody below, because in my opinion, that demographic is just lost in the wayside. Like no one's really paying attention to the kid, like little Johnny that can climb V7, but he can't climb V10. So he's not on an elite team. Like, but that kid, that's the kid who's going to grow up, probably going to stay in town, probably going to have more kids, probably going to have more people, and probably bring more people to the gym than the kid who's going to World Cup circuits at all. And so it's very important to me. And that's pretty freaking cool. I did not I was looking at your boulders actually, and I was actually funny. I was looking at it and like, I was like, okay, the hard stuff is real hard. But then everything else I was looking at, I was like, okay, this is pretty manageable. And it's funny that you said that, because my caliber for a gym, when I first walk into it, I think of 3 kids in each one of my programs, the top tier, the middle tier, and the bottom tier. And I'm like, the very first thing I do in each program is I walk around a gym and I can imagine, I try to imagine if the kid can walk up, read the route, and onside it. And if like a gym cannot, and if I walk into a gym and I would say at least 50% of the kids in all my tiers in my head can't onside it, I'm not saying the gym is less of quality by any means, but what I do feel is they are missing out on a large demographic, and they're leaving money on the table for customer satisfaction and customer experience, which ultimately is what we're in the business for. We're in the business to create a lifelong experience that just hooks you and you want to come back and rock climb every day. Because that's what we want to do.
So when you think about those 3 kids, how would they do in our gym?
I think they would do great. Like I can think of this little kid. We have this 2 French sisters named Lena and Morgan, who are at the like top tier of their groups, and they would come in here and smash. But then there's some stuff down here I see that they would get like really shut down on. But then we have the group that we call the Little Littles, and they're teeny. And there is this little kid named Graham and Isaiah. Graham, he just won the Heartbreaker Award. We do these like little silly awards at the end of every year. Awesome. So we do an after holiday party. So I do our Christmas party after New Year's, because like parents are so busy with everything else. And so, but we gave this kid, because he has the best hair at practice all the time. So he has the Heartbreaker Award.
Nice.
But he's like 7. So he doesn't even know.
That's awesome.
But yeah, Graham would come in here and smash. But then we have a kid named Andrew, who's newer on the team. And Andrew would not smash as well, but he would have a glorious day, because he'd walk up to me and he'd be like, I sent a couple boulders, but I got it halfway up most of them. I'm super excited. And he would be like amped about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, and I think that's like the key thing, is the thing I like that you have here is like, it's easy for me to redefine based on what I see. It's easy for me talking to kids to redefine success to them. Cause that's like the hardest thing. Cause like with children, if it's not an A+, you got an F.
Yeah.
And if you come from parents who are like, very like, if you weren't first, you're last, if blah, 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 blah. And it's like redefining what success is a key thing. And what I always try to tell kids is like, success is a build. And they don't understand that at a young age, but I'm like, so I always say success is Legos. And they're just like, what? I'm like, when you get the first set of Legos, is that to build your little thing? Is that challenging? They're like, no, it's not that hard. I'm like, oh, that's like climbing white boulders, V0s, VBs. And they're like, oh. I was like, now what if we need to build, and we're building like a Lego beach. What if we need to build like the sand and all that? That's not that hard. And I'm like, oh, so that's like V2. And like, I then talk about how success is Legos, because you have to redefine it for them. And so I'm kind of going on this weird tangent here.
I love it.
But this is how I explain it to the kids. And because every kid knows Legos and every parent has stepped on them at least once.
Yeah. I love that. Like redefining success. Cause like you asked, like why climbing, and that's like a massive part, at least for me, but I know other people, it can take longer to get bit by the bug because it is so much failure in the beginning. I think for a lot of us who like love it, it's because of the hard days. And then you come in, you have a really good day. You're like, yes, that was that. There's not much like that. Like right now I climb maybe one day a week, and I do tons of, riding my bike. I recently got into like gravel racing and stuff out of COVID and whatnot. Like just, pulled my mountain bike out because we had to shut down the gym. I was like, oh, I need to go hang out by myself. And we were pregnant with our first kid, so I rode my bike a ton. And anyways, I feel like, gravel riding and stuff, like it's not that hard to feel successful. Like you can go out on a big day and you get home, you're like, that was a good day. But like climbing, it's just always in your face of like, okay, I have to be like fluid. I have to be able to adapt. And then here it's like, if I'm struggling on a boulder and like a customer walks up, like I need to be joyful and like, cause at the end of the day, like we do love this sport. And we know that like the work we put in, like we'll eventually have a payoff, but it's pretty unique. I think we try to talk to parents about that of like, hey, this can really teach your kid how to deal with failure. And they'll be like, oh, okay, that sounds good. But then after 2 months, you talk to that parent and they're like, wow, he's like, there's been a huge mental change in my kid. Because
it forces it upon you.
Yeah.
Because you either just, I think the thing with it is people are going to hate me for saying this, but like, I think bullies need to come back to a certain extent and people need to be bullied, but rock climbing is the bully. But the thing is you can defeat it. You can conquer it. And I'm not saying people need to be mean or anything like that. I'm not stating that, but the thing with climbing is so unique, and especially from the perspective, it doesn't matter, adult or a child. I was going to say from a kid, but it's a sport where you just have to openly be okay with going back to a place where you just had your butt handed to you and you just have to walk in. And some people who are more emotionally attached to that situation, let's say I'm not one of those people. I'm like, if I get my butt handed to me, I get mad. I definitely lose my temper, but then I also kind of laugh at it because I'm like, oh, like you have that aha moment. And I think that that's something that is hard for people to really kind of grasp.
Yeah.
And I think just like, if you're a person who takes it really personally, and like, if you're a person where I've come to realize there are people who live in this world and believe the world is happening to them. And there are people in this world who believe the world is happening around them. I am personally one who believes the world is happening around me. And I find if you're someone who believes the world is happening to you, and most people who are that way don't know they think that way. I think that it's a very hard pill to swallow. And I think this sport is a really great catalyst for growth because you kind of have to reconcile with that very quickly. And yeah, I don't know. Like,
totally agree.
Yeah, climbing's heavy. It's real heavy. I always like it's funny. My friends get so annoyed with me because I can relate any life metaphor to rock climbing whatsoever. Like no matter what it is. Yeah. Rock climbing and food. I can relate anything to rock climbing and food.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, man. So so we've kind of learned a little bit about your gym, and we've learned a little bit about your history and your family. And so I guess, a question that I would want to ask for you, like this is actually a question that we're going to ask in the interview series when we're here in your gym today. Why is climbing so social?
Why is it so social?
Yeah. Why is it such a social phenomenon? I think this is just interesting from your perspective as a gym owner.
Yeah, I think again, back to like climbing changing for me over the years. I think it is different for every person. Like for some people, I think they flat out don't want climbing to be social. Like owning a gym, I have some people that come in and like they really don't want that part of it.
Really? I mean, I see those people with headphones on, but is that more often than not?
No, they're definitely the exception. Okay. Yeah, most people, I don't know if it's some sort of personality trait that like lends outdoorsy people to like want to talk about and hang out with others. And I don't know. I don't think climbing is unique in that. Again, back to cycling and any other thing. Like there's a lot of things that, not to get too philosophical on what I believe.
Preach, preacher. Preach.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
I just think like it's what like community and like being around people, being for other people. I think it's kind of what we were created for. So I think that it's hard to look at climbing and be like, oh, well, climbing is so social because it's something that climbing offers. When really it's just like people, human beings come into our gym and they're around other human beings and you see it flourish. You're like, oh yeah, of course this is working because we're all behind screens and cell phones and all that stuff all the time. But
yeah, I would agree.
And that's why we personally, I mean, there's insurance and anxiety and all that stuff of why we haven't done a rope gym, but that's why we stuck with bouldering is because it's so easy to force community.
Yeah.
Like when you come in our gym, 90, 98% of the people are on their butts talking to people, and there's a 2% that's on the wall. Like, it's pretty great. So, yeah, we enjoy the environment that a bouldering gym offers.
I think any sport that involves you being under the sun is something that kind of forces a little community, because when you're out in nature and you're kind of exploring in the vastness and the world of it all, even if you're super experienced, I have found that you still need a little bit of help time to time. And it's enjoyable to take in the moment. And this has definitely been a growth edge for me. It's enjoyable to take in the moment and then gazing at the glory of a canyon or a valley or anything like that. And it's great to take a photo of it, but it's better to share it with someone. It's much better to share it with someone. I used to be very much the other way. I'm like, I'm out here just doing my thing. But it's lonely.
Yeah,
it is lonely. And it's something that I've definitely had to learn along the way. And I think that's something that, whether it's mountain biking, whether it's kayaking, whether it's that, I just think outdoor adventure sports are unique in maybe not so much building community, but quickly solidifying bonds. Because especially when you're like, I don't know if you've ever done any big wall or multi-pitch or anything like that yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But like, you can think about it, like, I have very vivid memories with those partners and very vivid moments where I'm like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And I remember my buddy Will looking at me and was like, I know you don't want to do it. I don't want to do it, but we can't go down.
Yeah.
We're like past the point of return. He's like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a point where it's like, it's more dangerous to try to bail than it is to like just continue to go up. And so the only way is off is up. And I personally live for those moments. That's why I love multi-pitch. I love big wall. I love being put in a spot where it's just like in the moment, if you watch me, it looks like I'm having the worst time of my life.
Yes.
But I was just recently climbing in Chattanooga with my friend Andrea Hassler, and she was like, oh, you should do this route on T-Wall. And I had done it before years ago, and I didn't remember it. And it's a little bit to the right of the Pursuit of Excellence, and it's just to the right of, I think it's Flight of the Falcon is what it's called. It's to the right of that. There's this like 10 finger crack. So you go up this 5'9", 5'8" thing, but then you traverse out into like this openness, which when I say the openness is nowhere, it's like no bigger than this. Like the traverse is no bigger than this big giant blocks volume right behind us. Yeah. Maybe two of them put together. But then like if you fall on the first move, like you're pendulum down right into the thing.
Yes.
And I just remember being like, and I go back and she yelled up, she's like, you don't have to do it. I was like, I know. And I went up there and I like bled through the whole climb. I did it. And then it's like, you do this like 10C finger crack trad thing. It's not finger locking, and then you get up to this run out V4, V3 boulder that you've got to do on mossy rock to this like blind throw, this slopey juggy catch. And then you just palm press and then kind of reach around and grab a jug and you pull the chains. And I just remember lying over the edge and I was like, oh man, I think I just peed on myself. And just like lying there. And I like got up and I was trying to explain to her and a few people, they're like, you didn't really have to do it. And I'm like, I know I didn't have to, but I had to. Mm-hmm. And I think this is where the bonds get built, and at least with yourself. I was in a moment where I was like, if I back down from this climb, this is a moment that I'm going to remember. And I'm going to give myself an excuse to back down off of other things in the future. I'm going to be like, well, I did that one climb. It was safe for me to back down. So blah, blah, blah. And I just knew in my heart of hearts, and I was like, I don't remember if I've done this climb before. I know this is not outside of my ability. I know I'm not in the best physical shape right now. I know all these things. I know these things. I know these things. I know. But the one thing that I did know is I can do this climb. I had 40 reasons why I couldn't do it that were 100% valid. Which I would have been perfectly happy with. But I knew I could, and I knew I should. And I'm a big fan of actually not using the word should, because I don't believe you should on yourself. And I don't think you should yourself into doing anything, but there is a moment where it is necessary. Yeah. And I was like, I need to do this because if I walk away from this, I think I'm setting a bad precedence for myself. And then
this is why you're hanging from like 2 jugs too. So you're like
No,
developing a pump, or you're like back in a corner.
I was actually standing on a ledge. I'm not going to be very careful. There's no glamorous. Now, I mean you, when I was in the crack, I was just like, "Rah!"
Yeah,
like that. But yeah, you know, man, and I'm going on this big tangent. But
no, that's pretty resolute to like be able to do that yourself.
Yeah.
To be able to like go through those filters. And
then do you coach the kids that you work with too as well?
I used to when we opened, but now, we've grown enough to where.
Okay. And I think these are the same lessons. I think this is also what crossed my mind, and I'll end it with this, is like, this is the same kind of conversation I'm trying to figure out how to have a 7-year-old to have. I'm trying to get a 5, a 4, a 7, a 9, and a 12-year-old, 9, 11, and then like a 14-year-old to have, because I believe at those ages, the conversation is the exact same. The age appropriate language is different. The conceptualness of it and the understanding of it gets deeper and deeper and deeper, because like they'll never remember the conversation that you had at 4.
Right.
But they remember the feeling, you know, and it's like, I say this to parents all the time. It's like, kids don't know why they feel happy, sad, or that. They just know that they feel it.
Yeah.
That's all they need to know. Your job is just to navigate them through that. And when they're old enough, or if you have the ability to have the age appropriate language, navigate them through it on their own. But remember, you're just a navigator. You're not telling directions. And like, that's like the biggest like thing. And I'm going on this wild tangent about
I love it. I have this picture. My wife and I, like, we're going to get into scuba diving and stuff. And so we got certified, and she'd already been certified. She put me through it.
How did you feel?
Yeah, I'm like, I'll go up. I don't want to go down. But I was doing it, and we went down to Texas to a scuba park. And I remember, like, you have like your regulator, and then you have like a backup or whatever. And it was rental equipment. Well, the hose popped off my regulator, and I was just swimming around. And then all of a sudden I took a breath and took on water. Well, the first thing you're supposed to do is grab your backup. And we weren't that far down. We're like a scuba park in Texas, maybe like 25 feet or something. And I like grabbed a carabiner, tinked my tank or whatever. She didn't hear me, but I just like shot up to the top because I had forgotten everything that I learned in my classes. And when I got to the top, I was floating there for like 5 minutes, and she came up, and she's like, "Where the hell did you go?" And I was like, this happened. She's like, "Okay, put this back on. We're going back down there, because if you don't do it now, you'll never do it again." And I was like, I get that. I do get that. Like, yes, I do totally want to walk away from this right now. So yeah, that was in my mind the whole time you were telling that story. It's like, oh yeah, it's awesome. You were able to do that yourself on that route, because it took me having someone else, because I just would have bailed.
I think the thing is I would have been like you in that, because that's not my element.
Yeah.
That's not where I shine. I would have been very much like, my hose popped out, I taken water out. Your wife would have came up and found me on the boat deck, drinking a glass
sipping
of wine.
Modelo's, yeah.
Just hanging out. I'd be like, "What you doing?" I'm like, "I went down to the bottom. I'm done."
Yeah, so funny.
Oh man, that's wild. Yeah, man, that's scary. I don't know what it is. Like going underneath. I mean, I know this is stereotypical black, but I have no desire to scuba dive. I have no desire to do it. Will I eventually do it? Absolutely. But does it terrify me? No. I'm sorry. Yes, it does. And I know I don't want to do it now. Am I going to? Oh, yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
There's cool stuff to see at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's the last, they say the ocean is the most unexplored frontier in the entire world. Like the majority of it is undiscovered.
It's crazy. Yeah. My wife was like, so she has her master's in microbiology. So she studied like tick-borne pathogens and stuff.
That makes sense.
She had some good friends, obviously, through her master's program, that they were like doing tons of cool studies like in the ocean. So yeah, she did a lot more diving than me. She went down to like the Cayman Islands and like visited her friends and went diving, and she would come back, and I was just like, it sounds awesome. I don't want to do it. Let's go on a climbing trip. But
yeah. So what's the next evolution for this gym, and what's the next evolution for you guys? Like where would you like to see, Blockworks in the next 5 years?
So there's kind of two things that we focus on. Obviously, I was a route setter who opened up a gym. So like route setting and having a gym that feels like that's a priority to our customers is like one of our biggest things. Like we just want people to know that like putting plastic on the wall is a huge deal to us. And doing it in a way that like rewards people when they should be rewarded and challenges them when they want to be challenged, and like, so that meets all the things. And I think, I think when we initially opened, we were kind of like that by climber, for climber mentality. Mm-hmm. We haven't gotten rid of that by any means, but I definitely know that there's just, after operating for 3 years, you're like, okay, how do we continue to like get new people in us? Not just because it helps our numbers and helps our business grow, but because like we do know that this impacts people, and I'm not just here to impact like hardcore rock climbers. Like no. I want to get someone super pumped on like a crazy V0 we set that has like these massive volumes, and you're like crawling. And yeah, I think that there's just lots of cool stuff. So I want to continue to focus on that. Route setting is always going to be a priority of Blockworks. And then putting the people first. So I think the answer to that question is like, if there's towns that we can go into that we feel like need what we offer, then we want to do it to the exact same quality that we do it here, and kind of do the same thing. I think
it's beautiful.
Yeah, I think, thank you. I don't think it's like revolutionary. There's people all over the US that are like doing it.
No, I think it's probably pretty revolutionary. I think the difference between you and, granted, like I've spent most of my career climbing indoors in gyms, and I make it a point everywhere I travel to go to a gym. Like if there is a city, I go out of my way, even if it's like 2 hours out of the way where I'm staying, to go to gyms and I'm also that guy who has tons of climbing experience, but I'm like, they're like, oh yeah, you've been climbing for a while. I'm like, you can just skip. I'm like, nope, I want to go through your full orientation. And they're like,
nice.
They're like, what? And I'm like, nope. I'll take the blade test.
Maybe take a practice fall. Yeah.
Everything. Because I'm astonished. I'm just astonished at like, I've learned things from gyms, and I've definitely taken away things where I'm like, oh wow, this is okay, cool. And there are some things where I'm like, I've had to like, I've had some tactful, kind, and colorful conversations with management of like, okay, what's the purpose behind this? And some purposes I've heard like, we don't have any purposes. It's just what we do. And some people are like, well, we believe this builds better climbers and builds better this, and in 20 years, you'd be surprised what I've heard a lot. And what I am going to tell you right now is what you have said is unique, because most gyms, in my opinion, and I say this is only my opinion, and I've traveled majority of the gyms in the lower 48 and a lot on the East Coast and a lot on the West Coast, but most gyms are built on 3 principles: by climbers, for climbers. That's the end of that conversation, and they don't really care about anything else. 2, just trying to make money. They just like, they have people, they have investors, they have people they're trying to pay back. Like that's really all they're trying to do. At the end of the day, like the quality of routes, they would rather nickel and dime route setters, or like, promote someone up to head route setter that doesn't have the experience just because they know they can underpay them. And they're like, well, the routes are good enough.
I have so many thoughts on that though.
Yeah. But that's another episode. We can dive into that. Like there's a lot of, I can't say anything without like throwing someone under the bus, but let's just say like there's a lot of that happening in the United States right now, which is really sad. And I think as far as route setting and coaching, I'm hoping for an opportunity soon to talk at the CWA, because I kind of want to I want to go on full blast about something. I want to go full black on some people about route setting and coaching, about how these are the 2 most important aspects of the industry. Yeah. Because the industry will deteriorate without good route setting, and it will shrivel without good coaching. Yeah. And those are that's the end of those things. And the final thing is you, which not a lot of people say. The fact of the matter that your vision is really to just genuinely, wholeheartedly expose people to climbing and go into communities that really don't have it, or maybe even don't even have the largest infrastructure to support a big gym, because most big investors, they don't care about this.
Yeah, this is 5,500 square foot bouldering.
This is a waste of my time. Like I don't know. I imagine they're gonna be like, I'm not gonna make my money back for like 25 years from now. This is a waste of time. And I think that's the problem with like big money coming into, when you have a lot of suits coming into the climbing industry.
Yeah.
There are so many of us that are like at all costs, we have to protect the sanctity of climbing. And I think I can say this now, by the time this episode comes out, The Climb will have aired. And I was on that TV show with Jason Momoa and Chris Sharma. And I was like in Spain and Europe and doing that. And I remember when they were interviewing us, that was one of the things that I was most concerned about. They're like, this is an amazing opportunity for climbing. It's going to grow. It's going to be on HBO. It's going to be on a wide format. And I remember in my interview, when they interviewed me day one, I was like, whatever we do here does not matter if we do not protect the sanctity of climbing and what it is, because it is unique and it is beautiful. It is no more unique than cycling. It is no more unique than kayaking or any outdoor adventure sport.
Mm-hmm.
The point is the outdoors is a gift. It is a God-given gift, and we need to protect it at all costs. And I think climbing is a really good segue to get people outdoors from indoors, and it is a gift, and it needs to be protected at all costs.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that your mission statement states really clearly. And you're trying to protect and create, and you're open for interpretation and change to that experience.
No, it has to. Good grief. Yeah, that's one thing I know about. Just for 3 years of opening a gym, it's like and maybe my personality, but you're constantly like, what if we did this like different? What if we did that different? It's like, yeah, it can be a crutch sometimes. So I'm glad I have a team of leaders like packing it around me that are like, hold on, Evan. Like,
yeah, trust me. In my guiding company, I was always like, we can just modify this, do this. And I remember some of my employees were like, you can do that. Yeah, we do not have the infrastructure to do this.
Depending on other people's personalities, you can really cause a bunch of stress that doesn't need to be needed. Yeah, so that's, I mean, just recently that vision statement has come to like be an anchor for us to where we communicate that to staff. Because otherwise, like, I come in every other week with a new vision. I'm just like, here's where we're going.
Dude, I love it, man. So, dude, you like dreaming big and dreaming clairvoyantly. So like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If people want to support this gym who don't live here, or I know they can obviously come here and visit, but if they want to support you or be involved in what you're doing, how can they do that from afar?
Man, this isn't a great answer, but it's the first thing that comes to mind. That this whole gym happened through like conversations is actually at that coffee shop right across the street. I was like, writing my business plan. I looked at the coffee shop owner. I was like, this is what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think? And he was actually the one that helped us get this space where we lease it. But I think like, as long as people are talking about climbing and doing climbing, whatever that means for them, where they're at, maybe sharing our social media posts every once in a while. That's all we can ask for, really. And then when they're in town, come climb. Sure, a day pass does help. But I think that as long as there's people, and I imagine most of the people listening to this who are like passionate about climbing are out there and then sharing that with people,
Agreed.
They're helping our gym by just being a passionate rock climber. Like we do, you know, kind of year-end review of like who our customer was, how do we get new customers? And like, it just never fails. Like, climbers bring climbers in. Agreed. And like, that's how you get people in the gym. We can like buy billboards and do all this stuff, but it's like, yeah, I want, and it's just like the epitome of community. Like someone being at even if it's a family dinner table and they just like won't shut up about climbing. They're like, all right, you're going to come climbing with me next time I go to the gym. But that's across the US and across the world. Like that's what's going to help us the most is climbing continue to grow organically the way it is. And then of course we're going to have to do all the other stupid marketing stuff, which is like social, Google AdWords and all that. But
yeah. It's funny. My brother, every time I visit family, he was like, all right, you have the kids for this day to take them to the climbing gym. He's like, he doesn't even ask anymore. He knows.
Just
and I take
order.
the kids. I'm like, all right, for 30, 45 minutes, Uncle Mario's going to take you climbing. You can do whatever you want. I'll belay you. The next 45 minutes, Uncle Mario's time.
That's awesome,
dude. That's beautiful. That's kind of cool. I like that because it's kind of nice to know that, like, I don't know. You don't always hear that gyms are organically growing anymore, and at least from the inside, at least at our level, because like we're kind of insulated to it. And I try my best to be on the outside as much as possible from a new perspective. But to me, the world looks like it's just this trust fund money or corporate money coming in. And it's just, and by no means, like I want to be very clear. I have no quarrels with suits. I have no quarrels with trust fund money. I have no quarrels with this coming in. As long as it's coming in by someone who cares and genuinely is passionate about the sport. And it's not someone who just like, okay, Bloomberg magazine said this is the new Fortune 500 company and we're just going to get invested in it. And we're just going to like, and I think I personally believe the big corporations that I do know of, most of them have learned very quickly, like this has to be run by climbers.
Yeah.
They can back it, but this has to be run by people that care because it's too intricate. There's too much nuance. There's too much like faux pas or however you say that, faux pas, like where it's just like feathers can be ruffled. And it's like,
it's a very difficult industry to run if you're not passionate about rock climbing.
Yeah. You're just like some dude trying to collect a check and then that's like climbing gyms in the 90s.
And I would argue, I would be interested to know like what percentage, but most of the gyms in America, even if there's big money, like at some point it filters down to someone who had an idea, was passionate about it, climbing impacted them, and now they're doing it.
I think most of them are that way. There's a couple of random outliers that gyms that I've physically been to that are still run by old trad dads who just don't care and like they're setting for themselves or there's a few gyms that have just been bought by like, you know, local community. Joe Blow had a ton of money and he just bought it out or built one and he just thought because it was a good idea to make him money. And, you know, and then the rest of the stories are the common issues that we all know, which we won't get into. But,
yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see 5 or 10 years. We're at such an interesting point in the gym industry right now. Still,
I think we're at a pivotal point of shifting. I think Boone is right, man. Boone has been talking about like, I think the model of gyms is about to pivot. We are at a pivotal point where the models of gyms is going to begin to shift. We are watching, I believe, to give you a visual picture, we are watching the dam gates begin to open and you just start to see trickles. And it's been so dry so long because this is the format. And I believe you just see a trickle, a couple trickles. And within 5 to 10 years, a stream is going to be happening. And I think within another 5 to 10 years, it's just going to be, it's full open. It's full on. I don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah, it'll look very different. Different at every gym.
I mean, like I have a small idea of like how I envision it to be. And this is something I'm going to put in another like solo episode in the future. But like, I think climbing is, this is going to be a bold statement and people in Texas are going to hate me for saying this, but I think climbing is going to replace football.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. I think it's the natural progression of things because like, I think it's just going to become more accessible. I think it's going to be more accessible to high schools, schools, and things like that. And it's more accessible to people at all. I think it's what's going to happen. And I know it's a bold statement to make, and I don't know exactly how it is. And I wouldn't mind ushering it in, but I think it's eventually going to do that because, you know, just you're a father, you know, and then at the end of the day, I know whenever I have kids, and I'm not saying football is bad or terrible, I'd rather my kids climb than do that. I'd rather my kids play basketball. I'd rather my kids play baseball. I'd rather them play a lot of things. And I think certain sports are slowly going to begin to usher their way out. Because the reality of it is the cost to risk ratio is just too high.
Yeah.
It's too high.
I'll play devil's advocate a little bit because I feel like we have to think about why football is so successful. And it's because it can be consumed so easily. And I think climbing is like, even I think of whatever 6 or 7 years ago, like, and I still never miss like an IFSC, especially a Boulder World Cup or whatever it is. We try to show them here at the gym and stuff, but like maybe my immediate family members, I've gotten them psyched on like watching an IFSC, but it's just so hard to consume if you're not. Whereas like football's like, I can consume that. And it also involves so many other things like a bunch of food and cheap beer. And So
I think
the
climbing
consumer part of it.
I think climbing will eventually consume all those other aspects, all those marketing aspects that are tied onto it. But right now it is a niche sport. But the reason why football is successful is right. It's so easily consumed because it can be done everywhere.
Yeah.
And the only reason why it's done everywhere is because it's done in public schools.
Mm.
And I think that's why it's effective. The thing that makes climbing hard outdoors is because you have to travel somewhere and go it. But I think if climbing gyms, if every school had a climbing wall of some decent sorts in their basketball area that was, I don't know, like behind the bleachers or whatever. I'm not an architect. Your dad is, so we can talk to him about this. But I think if every school had that, I think it would change.
Yeah.
I think you would see this huge growth in this kind of culture and community. And I think it would be the great equalizer for boys and girls.
Yeah.
Because that's why I think it's going to take over.
Because girls are better at climbing.
A billion times better. A billion times better.
Yeah, especially the little ones, man. You're like, and that boy's just doing a pull-up his whole time here.
I always tell parents, I'm like, you don't understand. Like a 7-year-old girl can beat the crap out of a 7-year-old boy. They're physically
crazy.
stronger.
It's wild.
It's not until the boy hits like 12 or 13 where testosterone kicks in.
Yeah.
But I've literally watched girls just like run laps.
And they finally understand how to use their feet. It's like,
Oh my God, it's a whole nother animal. But I think that's the thing about like climbing. Like when I do mock comps in my gym, I don't do gender categories. We don't. Like the boys climb with the girls. And that's like the biggest thing that parents and other athletes and coaches tell me. Like when they come in to see the sport, they're like, boys and girls train together. And they're like, well, they have to. And I'm like, the boys and the girls won't get any better. And me as a coach, I'm always telling my athletes, I'm like, I just told one of my kids, her nickname is Enchilada. Cause she does some moves that are pretty spicy sometimes. They're like, Enchilada, getting a little too spicy, back off the caliente. But then I've coached her since she was like 7 years old. So I'm kind of partly responsible for all of that. So I just have to like take it in strides. But I was just literally talking to her yesterday. I'm like, you've been climbing with the boys a lot, haven't you? And she's like, she sinks down and she's like, and I'm like, you're not using your feet anymore. And she's like, yes, I am. And I show her a video of what she just did. And she's like, oh. And then it's vice versa. I do this all the time. And I that's one of my coaching strategy is I pair kids into groups for the whole months and pair them with different athletes that are stronger at different attributes.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's a part of like the social science behind it, I guess. But getting back to the point is, I think it has a chance to do it if we are ushering it in a way where we can continue to make the sport accessible, because climbing is inherently dangerous, but I don't think from a longevity standpoint, it's inherently dangerous as contact sports.
Yeah. From what we see. Yeah.
I don't think it's inherently dangerous as sports that you need serious padding and protection for, the only others, and I'm not saying these sports need to go away, but the reality of it is I think you just build a better community when you have a sport that's co-ed run, co-ed coach, and more accessible. And I think that's really important. And that's why I say that. Mm-hmm. But we're going on this rabbit train of all over the world.
That's great.
Yeah. Man, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank you for letting me be in your gym. And is there any shout outs or anything you want to say hello to anybody? And I don't know. Sure. This is your podcast at this moment as much as it is mine.
Oh man. Shout outs. It's hard to, like I said, this whole thing was kind of done based on conversations, and then employees that have like been here before, but they're not with us anymore for whatever reason. Like we've made bad decisions at times. We made good decisions. We've been good bosses and bad bosses. But just to know that like, we've loved everyone we've gotten to work with, from the person who owns the building to every staff member we've ever had, and we'll have. So shout out to the people that make up Blockworks for sure. And then like we're super proud to like work with Entrepreneur when we opened up. So they did all of our walls, flashed at our flooring. like all that stuff was just super flawless for us. We had an amazing experience. So because I know someone who's opening up a gym might listen to this, the Entrepreneur is a wall manufacturer and Flash's flooring was as good as it can get in the climbing industry. And we would totally do it again, and we'll do it again. Yeah. So yeah, those people are fantastic. And then I want to shout out to the industry just as like a massive, maybe people are doing this really well and I just don't know about it, but being a smaller bouldering gym, a lot of the route setting talk in America goes towards USA competition setting, goes to IFSC setting. And I think as the industry grows, whatever we were talking about, 5 to 10 years, there's this massive thing in my mind that for me at least, and this is just an opinion, like commercial setting is so much more interesting to me. I love setting commercial climbs and I love watching people do it. I love watching people set commercial climbs, like the Summit guys back in the day when I started, Lacrasto and, Tucker, like all those guys. Like I used to just watch them set and it was just like, this is incredible. And I would go down there to like when the Denton gym opened and I would just like get smoked for like 4 hours and think that every boulder was incredible. And at that time it wasn't about comp style. It wasn't any of that stuff. It's just commercial setting, extremely fun, extremely challenging. And I just want that to be more of a conversation because I feel like it's so cool to talk about comp setting and
it is.
Post videos on Instagram of like a comp boulder. But like, I just would love to see, like Nathan at Rock Candy, he hosts some really cool free clinics for route setters. And a lot of those like by Ward and those guys are about commercial stuff, commercial setting. And I would just love to see that continue to grow because I feel like, yes, we need more setters who are qualified to set USA and IFSC stuff. But man, at the gym level, like owning a gym, we also need route setters that
just want to make fun climbs.
Yeah, want to make good climbs. They want to love their job. They want to see great growth potential in their job as a commercial route setter. And I do think a lot of that weight rightly falls on the gyms right now. Like, hey, it's your job as a gym owner to develop a route setting program that makes these people feel valued and
Agreed.
Like they have growth. But I don't know. I don't have the answers. I've been operating here for 3 years. I still set every Thursday. I don't know when I'll stop. If we do more gyms, I would love to set more than one day a week. Like,
don't stop.
Yeah.
It's like the one thing I miss a lot. Like I don't have the time to do it, doing this podcast and doing other endeavors. But like, it's probably the one thing I miss more than anything else.
Yeah. The times I get burnt out, I'm like, I just need an off week. And I take an off week. I'm like, okay, I need to be back behind it.
I'd always find like when I get burned out of route setting, then I'd go on a climbing trip and I'd be like, the first thing I get back, I'm like, I want to make like the easiest simulator of this route. Like actually, that was probably one of my most proudest moments. I made a simulator of Wife in the Fast Lane is Sport Climb and Reimer's Ranch. It's probably the best 510 in the state, hands down. The best 510 in the state until I bolt the next one. I didn't bolt this one, but until I do that. But I made a simulator of it, and it was like a very commercial style thing. But then this guy got on it, and he was like, "Man, this thing is really fun." It was a route that I set in the gym back in Dallas Rocks days, and then I was like, "Dude, you gotta go to Reimer's and do this route." And then he came back like 3 weeks later, and he was like, you basically set almost the same like sequence leading up into it. And I was like, did you send the route? And he's like, I flashed it. And I was like, yeah. I was like, and I literally like dropped my drill on the ground. I was like, life is completed.
That's awesome.
I'm happy. But I was so psyched. I was so cool. Psyched, dude. That's like brings me a lot of joy. That's why I like route developing. It's like,
it's very similar.
It is
bringing something to life for someone else to have fun on.
Yeah. And I think the nice thing, and maybe, I don't know if you've ever experienced this in the route setting, but like you walk up to someone and they're like, I just climbed that route. And I'm like, what'd you think? And then they immediately go into the same train of thought that you had, or when you were putting it on the wall, or especially in outdoors. It's like, I see why you did this. I didn't like it, but man, that sequence, it was just so bold and I did it. And then I was like, what'd you think of the view? They're like, it's pretty spectacular from that spot.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, like, one of my favorite things to do, I always tell people to do is like, when you pull the crux of a sequence, if you have the ability, just take a look back and see what's around you, and then go to the chains just for a split second, and then go to the chains and then top out and look. Or when you're lowering, take a look back at that moment. And it's always a beautiful thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Climbing's unique in that way. Well, outdoor adventure sports as a whole is unique in that way. It's like, I have a buddy who talks about the same experience riding whitewater rapids and kayaking, which to me is very brave.
Gnarly. Yeah.
Very brave. Yeah. I've watched them do some waterfall stuff before, and I'm like, and then until you see them pop up, like your whole heart just stops beating. But we can talk about adventure and climbing forever. But I want to thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're an amazing human being, and I would love to do a follow-up with you and talk with you more about your gym. And I want to go rock climb now. Now it's time to go rock climb.
Hey, man, so we have the Wichita Mountains, but we also, just this past year, guy Sean, who's a local old school crusher, he's going to be pissed I said old school. He's not that old. He's bone strong, but he was kind of the leading guy to start the Oklahoma Climbing Coalition, which is awesome that we have. I mean, I think when people think of Oklahoma, there's just no climbing, but
there's a lot.
Yeah, right.
There's a lot.
So Tulsa, and then also the Wichitas, but then there's this whole sector in like Southeast Oklahoma, where you start to get these mountain ranges that spill over from Arkansas, and they have a bunch of hidden rock. Is that the tail end?
Is that the top end of the Kiamichis?
Yeah. Where like McGee Creek and the Ouachitas, all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm familiar. Isn't the White Sides or White Wall or White something?
There's White Rock.
Yeah. I haven't been there. Okay. Yeah, we need to talk because I've been, I have a backstory about, like, I was stomping around that part. I was stomping around those parts about 10, 12 years ago.
That's terrifying.
I have a story to tell you. I have a story to tell you. I'll tell you.
You don't really want to stomp around in backwoods, Oklahoma.
Oh, I will tell. There is a story where I had some interesting comments and or threats that I didn't know that were made towards me, but I was just ignoring. But yeah, I was stomping around in solid rebel country 10 years ago. But yeah, I think Oklahoma, I think the two states that are going to revolutionize climbing in the next 10 years is Oklahoma and New Mexico.
Ooh, yeah.
Oklahoma and New Mexico. And my plan is to make Texas rope sport climbing.
Nice. There you go. Yeah.
Very soon.
Sick, Craig.
Yeah.
Southeast Oklahoma. It'll be interesting to see. Land access is the hardest issue right now. A lot of it's privately owned or
I'm running into that same problem.
Yeah.
There's an organization you should reach out to called the SCC, the Southeastern Climate Coalition, based in Chattanooga. That's one of the reasons why I was in Chattanooga this last New Year's.
I think they might have some sort of relationship with Sean somehow. I could be wrong.
It probably is, but they orchestrated a lot of that, and that's probably who you want to touch base with. But if you ever want connections, I have strong connections there.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, love to see it.
Okay, well then, let's get out of here, and I think you're amazing.
Boom. Thank you, dog.
Friends and enemies, I hope you enjoyed this. And if you loved it, beautiful. If you hated it, well, you can always unsubscribe. But that's not what we're here for. You know, anytime you step into any big endeavor, you have to understand that you're putting things on the line. You're being risky. But as climbers and as adventurers, I think that's the stuff that we're made of. Taking these calculated risks, putting things on the line, gambling on ourselves, betting on ourselves is the only thing that we know how to do. And I think that's why this podcast reigns so true. If you're not willing to suffer for yourself and lay all the cards out for yourself, the send that you are aiming to do is not worth it. So as I always say, if you're not suffering, are you even sending at all? You got to ask yourself. Until then, I'm out. Structure audio.